All right, creating the ideal party continues. Last week went over the ideal barbarian, so now we're getting into the ideal paladin. So I picked the paladin because he'll act as pretty much like the backup, in a sense, melee fighter to the barbarian. Plus, he can also act as the backup healer to the cleric and everything. So has now this dual role, and of course, charisma is also like a decent is one of the good ability the abilities that they tend to focus on for paladin. So he can also, in a sense, be the face of the group and everything. So he can do all the talking and everything, in absence of having a bard in this group and everything. So he can, in a sense, be like like I said, the face and the talker. As my cat is looking for attention. Yes, 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 yes. We're talking about the paladin and everything. You want to be a paladin? Yeah. Yes. You're cute enough to be a paladin. Yeah. Yes, you are. No. Good old Khajiit paladin. There you go. So now, the primary abilities for like the paladin are considered strength followed by charisma. So this is why I say he can act as, like, in a sense, the face or the talker of the group, having a high charisma. So sorcerer is also based on charisma, so they're spellcasting. But I'm going with the wizard, and that's going to be in a future video. So in luau of not having a bard or a sorcerer, who all two classes are good, who are known for having high charisma. This is where the paladin will come in, step in, and kind of, like, in a sense, be like the supposed leader of the group, and like how he does all the talking and everything. So now with the stats and everything, so you want to have like a obviously high strength. So maybe you do like a 16 strength, and then you don't necessarily need as much dexterity, because you're going to be someone who's in like full plate mail, in a shield and like a sword and stuff. Think of the knight in shining armor type of deal. So dexterity isn't necessarily as important because of the armor that you're wearing for your AC. So you can kind of neglect that. So you could quite possibly have like a 10 dexterity. Constitution, quite possibly get 16 in there, so that way you can still soak up some damage when you do wade in combat. Intelligence is not that important for a paladin, so you could 10. Wisdom is somewhat important for the spellcasting, so you could 14, and then the 16 in charisma, like I said, because the paladin would, in a sense, be like the charismatic party member in with not having the bard or the sorcerer. So lacking those two classes that also shine with the charisma ability, we now have the paladin acting, in a sense, as a third role outside of combat and everything. So now the reason why you want wisdom, like I said, like a 14 or so, is for the spell casting, because they are divine spellcasters like the cleric, but they aren't necessarily primarily divine spellcasters as the cleric is. So now they have a dual role as, like I said, like a secondary fighter behind the barbarian. So while the barbarian will sit there and charge in and kind of get the monster's attention in combat, the paladin will wade in behind him and kind of act as in a sense, a support melee character. And then of course through the course of combat and everything, when the cleric is starting to heal, and if you need extra healing in a round or two, the paladin can step back and use his healing abilities as well. So now that's where the paladin will fit in, being the ideal paladin, kind of acting as a dual role, in combat. And outside of combat, he could quite possibly act as I keep reiterating, the face of the party, because the barbarian would be kind of not having that high of charisma, and kind of putting that on the back burner. He'd probably come across as kind of crass and over the top, and kind of crude and rude and totally obnoxious, and people wouldn't want to necessarily talk with someone like that. The cleric, with their a lack of charisma, might come off as too snotty, or too fanatical with their religious beliefs. The wizard might come across as being I'm smarter than you, so you're looking below. I look down on you because you're not as smart as me and everything. So this is where like a paladin having a higher charisma can come in handy because he might be able to handle like the social interactions outside of combat. Like when you're in the urban center, like you can sit there and go up and talk to the shopkeeper, like, oh hey, look, I work with so and so god, and like here's like a blessing I can do on this shop and everything, and like kind of like maybe work out a deal with the shopkeeper or something, or maybe like go into like the local tavern and be able to like sweet talk the barmaid without seducing her like the bard would or whatever. So like he might be able to like kind of like ease up to the barmaid or the bartender or would be like, oh hey, look, you know what's happening, what's going on and everything. So now it's like kind of like you can see how he becomes a triple threat now. He's a decent melee fighter in combat to back up the barbarian. He's an okay healer to back up the cleric and everything. And now in the outside of like combat, he kind of like steps up, and like you could, in a sense, like he could really shine in something like that. Whereas like the barbarian would shine in combat, the wizard would, in a sense, shine in like something like doing research for like further adventures. The cleric shines in obviously healing and everything. So this is like where like and that where he shines. So this is why you want like different classes, different abilities. So like you have like in a sense your all your abilities covered and everything. So this is where I picked the paladin and everything. So like to kind of like do like that, like I said, that triple threat. So like in combat, he backs up the barbarian with the fighting in the front lines. Then he can take a step back and actually like help out the healer and act as like a backup healer. So that's his dual role in combat. And then the triple threat is like with him being like the charismatic and like dealing with NPCs and being able to like kind of in non-combat situations and help out with like the like in between it, like the dungeon crawls or like combat situations you might find yourself in. He is able to kind of like I'll keep reiterating, he's like the face of the company in absence of the bard or the sorcerer. With those two classes, like I keep saying, are good for charisma as well. So like now you're starting now like with this video, you're now starting to see like, okay, so this is where we're going. So now we got like our combat our frontline combat guy our instance frontline duo covered. We got like a backup healer. So now okay, we're looking forward. Now we need to start covering like our primary healer. We need to like cover our primary arcane spellcast, and of course we need to like think about like our sneaking abilities. So this is where like the ranger and the rogue come in handy, which I'll be covering with all these in subsequent videos and everything. So to kind of round out the team and everything. So now, I'll say traditionally, the parties consisted of a fighter, a rogue, a cleric, and a wizard. So far, we have a barbarian in place of a fighter. Now we have a paladin as well, and I'm going with 6 players because usually good teams are like 4 to 6, but like you can get it up to like quite possibly 7 or 8. But that's where you're starting to get kind of crowded with like a lot of different characters and everything. So the sweet spot for adventure groups seems to be 4 to 6 players and everything. So I'm going with the 6 on the higher end, so that way we have more abilities to kind of cover more bases, and like we're not too crowded by going with like 7 or 8 and everything. So I might like going forward might add on to go, hey look, here's something you can do if you really wanted to have that huge group like you did in like the Dragonlance campaign set with which the Chronicles were based on. So this video is about like the paladin, the backup fighter, or like in a sense the backup melee fighter to the barbarian, and the backup healer to the cleric in combat situations. And being now like I finished like, saying that he's the, like I said before, he's the triple threat in being in non-combat situations where he kind of can take the lead and kind of shine with his higher charisma and being able like in a sense be like the keep saying the face of the company or party, and being able to help them maybe get some deals or like sweet talk the guards, or like kind of be like the like in a sense like shine in his role as like dealing like outside of combat, whereas like the barbarian would shine in combat and everything. So this is just like starting to round out the party now. So like the next week, what I'll do is I'll start getting into it. I'll probably cover the other two spellcasters, so that way then finally finish off with the your sneakers with the sneaking classes with the ranger and the rogue as well.